Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Coin News Extra TV interview session, a program where I invite innovators, stakeholders, influencers in the blockchain, crypto, and fintech ecosystem to come and their view. So today we're going to be talking about building the decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet. So we're going to be talking about that, and I have our guest who is joining us to have this conversation. I also want to apologize for us bringing this conversation earlier. We are supposed to have done this show is supposed to come by 2 p.m. West African time, but we are doing it now. So sorry for that. These are some because of some of the challenges beyond our control. So let's look at what we have today and welcome our guest. Our guest is Jason Eisen, who is the CEO of UTU Technologies, is joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. You are welcome to the show, Jason.
Thanks so much. So happy to be here.
It's our pleasure. So, how is Kenya today?
At the moment, bright and sunny, but yeah, it's been a lot of sunshine. Folks around or different parts of the country are struggling with drought, but we're all just keeping on.
Oh, that's very nice. So, for our audience, so if anywhere you're joining us, we are broadcasting on across 4 channels. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and also on Twitter. So wherever platform you're joining us from, do well to like and share this live broadcast. And if you have questions, you can as well drop. So our amazing guests will be able to answer them. So we'll go for a very short break. When we return, we delve into the conversation proper. Do not go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. It's still Coin's Strategic Interview. So we are talking about building the decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet. So let's look at, when we are talking about decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet, let me look at how can you explain decentralized trust infrastructure and its importance in the internet economy.
Sure. Yeah. It sounds very fancy. The decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet. It sounds very, I don't know, this or that, but it's actually quite straightforward. It's about trust and humans and people. How do we as people normally in the real world trust? Like if I ask you a basic question, like, who do you trust? I can probably predict your answer. You're going to say something like, I trust myself, I trust my family, I trust my friends. Well, I trust the people I know. Okay, maybe, well, some of them, sometimes for some things, right? So we all sort of trust the same way based on relationships plus context. But then if you look at how trust is constructed on the internet and how we are given signals that inform our decisions, it actually has nothing to do with this real world experience of trust that we have. And so as UTU, we really wanted to look at that human experience of trust and try to digitize it in the best way we could. So we said it's actually about relationships and context. So we thought, first off, there were some problems with trust as it stood in Web 2 or the current internet, because mostly it's siloed and controlled by centralized companies whose revenue models are directly in opposition to their value proposition to you as the consumer. You want better trust, better signal, better information that you can make good decisions. And most trust platforms are actually funded by brands that want to hide the bad stuff or move the good stuff up to persuade you to buy things. And so we realized that trust infrastructure, a true trust infrastructure for the internet, had to be oriented towards humans, not brands. It needed to be decentralized rather than centralized, so controlled by everybody instead of controlled by one company trying to profit from selling you or manipulating you this or that. And it need to mostly solve the economics and incentives problem that is plaguing trust on the internet today, right? If we think about why is it so hard to make an informed decision or interact with a site or a product confidently, It's because there's so many things that are out there trying to scam us. And there are so many people and organizations out there that can actually economically benefit from manipulating you, right? We could say that there's a lot of economic incentive to manipulate trust and very little economic incentive to preserve or build trust on the internet. So that's kind of backwards, and we really wanted to change this. So we set out to design a token model that could actually do this, and this is what we came up with UTU protocol, and what we've brought to life now over the last few years building UTU protocol's mainnet. So that's a very complicated, long answer, but I can summarize it in a couple main points. We wanted to make all of the content and signal owned by people. We wanted to change the economics around trust to benefit people and building of trust. And we wanted to provide that in a decentralized way that everybody can sort of access and contribute to without censorship and curated only for them. So that's what we mean when we talk about trust infrastructure. How do we help inform better decisions for you on the internet?
Interesting. That reminds me of some of the definitions when we talk about trust in the blockchain ecosystem. Some people will say, I don't trust a particular individual or organization, but I trust everyone because of the decentralized nature of blockchain technology. And we also see the impact that smart contracts is also making that. So that brings me, how does this, when we talk about the decentralized trust infrastructure, how does it differ from when it comes to the traditional centralized approaches to trust and security on the internet?
Sure. Well, there's a few types of trust or a few types of security. There's cybersecurity and technical security. There's also like social trust, right? So it depends on what type of thing we're talking about. You can analyze code, and there's lots of great tools out there to analyze smart contracts and understand if they are safe to interact with or not. They're not all perfect. And with metamorphic smart contracts, I think it's also that field is getting even more complicated. But then there's also the social trust element. This is really where UTU focuses. And again, the key difference from centralized entities is really who controls the data and who earns from it and who sets the incentive structures and the rules of the road. And so in the UTU model, we all share that responsibility, looking at trust as basically a core infrastructure that should be agnostic and not favoring one party or the other. So that's really what we've set out to do. It's quite a different model than, say, the Google reviews or Trustpilot or TripAdvisor or some of the common kind of review platforms of Web 2, where they own everything. They profit off all of your content and your reviews. And then the curation is such that bots are really able to infiltrate that messaging, right? So our system is quite different from this. It mitigates all those factors.
Okay, let's look at some of the contributions that UTU technology is really making when it comes to decentralized trust infrastructure. How are you making contributions?
Sure. Well, we actually launched the mainnet of UTU protocol, which is exactly this. It's what we consider the decentralized trust infrastructure for Web3. We launched the mainnet late last year, and we've seen up to like 10,000 users connect their wallets to the protocol at this point. And then just recently, last week actually, we launched the UTU Trust browser extension on the Chrome and Brave extension stores. So essentially, those extensions allow consumers to get UTU signals and leave UTU signals in place as they browse and surf the internet. So I always like to think about the 5 core actions of Web3. There's really kind of 5 main things that we can do with our wallets, right? We can connect them to a dApp, we can send tokens, we can swap tokens, we can stake tokens, and we can borrow tokens. Those are really the 5 core actions. And each of those things comes with a very specific fear that you might face, right? When you're connecting to a wallet, you're connecting your wallet to a dApp, you might think like, you're about to press connect, and you think, do I really want to connect my wallet to this dApp, right? what is this? Do I feel safe? Is it going to drain my funds? We have all those questions that come right at that moment we're about to press connect, and there's a lot of signal that could help us feel better about that. So imagine you're about to connect your wallet to some DApp you've just come across on the web, and just at that moment we're able to show you some signal, something like 5 of your contacts, including Lee and Jason and Sarah and Susan, have interacted with this DApp 20 times in such ways, depositing 10 ETH and leaving great feedback about it and endorsing it with some of their reputation. So this is actually the UTU model, this idea of reputation endorsements, putting your reputation behind your feedback. So if we can quantify your reputation, which is what we do with UTU Trust Token, it's one of our smart contracts that we've written. It's a reputation. It's a non-tradable token that you can basically use to stake on endorsements. So when you say this thing is good, this entity on the web is good, whether it's an email address or a URL or a wallet address or a token contract or liquidity pool, any uniquely identifiable asset, you can be able to leave feedback and stake your reputation on that feedback. And then when people see your feedback and basically decide maybe to interact with that asset based in part or in full on your recommendation or your endorsement, you basically have some stake in the outcome of that transaction. So if they end up really having a great experience, and maybe that happens for a lot of people, your content helps a lot of people discover a really great product, you're going to earn reputation and you're going to earn UTU coin rewards as a result. So we created this revenue model out of building trust. And I think that's the biggest contribution that we'll make to the whole ecosystem, is to find an economic model and define an economic model that disallows the manipulation of trust and creates a revenue model for people for building trust online.
Interesting. You made mention of how you're doing that and building trust. So let's, and also you made mention of UTU tokens as a reward for building trust on the platform. So that brings me to the next question. What role do you think blockchain and cryptocurrency is going to play in building the decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet?
Yeah, I think blockchain and cryptocurrency have really been the enabling technologies that allows us to build this in a way that we believe in. I think we saw alternative visions of how trust might look in the future. Things like the Chinese social credit scoring system, which I'm not a big fan of. If you've seen it, it's kind of scary. And we really thought that there was an obligation to provide an alternative vision of the future to that. One that is decentralized. And I think this is the most important bit. Like, we would not have built this if we couldn't have built this in a way that everybody owns and shares the control of, and is meant to be this benevolent infrastructure for the web.
Oh, interesting. Let's look at some of the challenges. When we've been able to look at this particular topic, building the decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet, let's look at what are some of the challenges and obstacles in building this particular decentralized trust infrastructure of the internet on a large scale. What are some of the challenges and obstacles?
Yeah, I think at the high level, there's quite a few. First off, you have a very complicated problem, like game theoretical problem, that requires a mechanism design that's tuned to all these different actors and all the different attack vectors that they can try to manipulate this economic model. We just so happen to have a brilliant PhD multi-agent systems game theory expert in our co-founder and CTO, Bastian Blankenberg. So we were able to really hone in on that model. We also have high-level challenges around privacy preservation and data architectures. Most of what we're doing is never been done before. These are things, it's not like building a marketplace for widgets, right? Where you're just changing the design and the logos and pressing ship. This is kind of novel research on privacy preservation, on curation, and so many different ways, architectures. multi-chain architectures, looking at the fact that the future is most definitely multi-chain, and dApps need to be able to provide that sort of value proposition seamlessly across them. Not to mention, I think there's just a lot of legacy interests that are threatened by UTU protocol. We spent time trying to push into Web2 marketplaces earlier. And I think what we found is that there's not a lot of interest from Web2 marketplaces to be transparent, to give up control of their reviews, to let that process shine light on kind of what's actually happening. A lot of guys said, well, we can't work with UTU, we wouldn't be able to manipulate our reviews anymore. And you realize how deep that problem is. These are some of the problems that industry of vested interests around manipulation of reviews and trust is really deeply entrenched. And so it takes the entirety of Web3, I think, and our communities to come together and insist that we actually want to change the paradigm of trust on the web and move to something that favors individuals. Lee? I see some questions from the viewers as we're waiting for.
Welcome back to the show. So apologies, we had some technical issues there, so we couldn't bring you those commercial break. So let's just before we draw the curtain on today's episode of Coin is a Strategic Interview, let me hear from you, Jason. How do you see the future of decentralized trust infrastructure in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think the future of decentralized trust is really UTU. The work is now at the community level. We have done a huge lift in designing the mechanism and building the main net, and now even launching the consumer flagship product, the browser extension. So we have a core product for consumers. We have the API and SDK for developers to integrate decentralized reviews and reputation into their apps and platforms and exchanges and wallets. So we've demonstrated with multiple high-value use cases how this sort of decentralized trust can bring value to marketplaces on the web. And I think the rest of the journey is really one about driving adoption. And so in the next 5 to 10 years, I see a real shift of people from centralized, privacy abusing, rent seeking platforms and systems towards models where customer owners and we have a say in the future of these technologies. So I think that's where we're going.
Okay, interesting. I just have a few questions from our audience. Maybe I'll ask them. So just in 2 minutes, we'll be able to answer them. Joseph Ade is asking, if you are to trust the internet, how can we know or control hacking it?
Yeah, I guess what UTU advocates is not to trust the internet, but to trust who you already trust. We don't even want you to trust us. Why should you? You already know who you trust. Our work is really to try to bring you that sort of information and signal at the right place and right time to help you connect, send, swap, stake, and borrow with confidence, right? All of these actions. So we're just Rails to provide Rails and an economic model around review and endorsement content to provide you signal from people you already know you trust, not to be the centralized source of truth for the internet, not at all.
Oh, interesting. Another question from Ken
Yeah, Ken
Chukus
can call in.
asking, are you, hello?
No, go ahead.
Another question here is asking, are you guys open to investing in startups building on this IT? Ken Chukus is asking.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So UTU protocol is an open source protocol. So in fact, anybody can build on top of it. And that's the goal, is that the community builds a vibrant ecosystem of products and services on the foundation of UTU protocol. We are working on getting a grants and bounties program online. We've already done some bounties, but we'd love to get a bunch more bounties available for the community to build and deploy exciting products, and as well as grants to kind of unleash the creativity of the community on what could happen, what could be built on top of UTU protocol. Check out our white paper, check out our GitHub. You can see all the details there and even start building. Reach out to the team as well.
Yeah, interesting. Nice conversation it has really been. Thank you very much, Jason Eisen, for joining us today on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. So thank you, our audience who took our time to join us. I really hope you learned a lot because it was informative and insightful. So thank you very much, and also stay tuned for our program coming up by 12 p.m. West African time. That's Tech Wales, and also we have Week in View by 4 p.m. West African time. A lot of shows that we have for you today. So stay with us. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks, Trust.